Okay, let's begin again. I apologize. What's new? Okay, so we are on administrative laws. We were just beginning there. Administrative laws are regulatory enforcement. We know that administrative warrantless searches involve the cigarettes and the LCC and liquor. They can go in, they look to make sure the licensing is proper without a warrant. Well, the administrative laws regulate enforcement of just that. Cigarettes, alcohol, hunting, fishing, the DNR falls within the regulatory enforcement, and your controlled substance classification. Remember, controlled substances deal with all any kind of prescription or any kind of a chemical combination of things, whether legal or illegal. They are known as controlled substances because they are controlled and scheduled. And that would all be done under administrative laws. And within these first three, typically, when an individual is working against those laws or violation of those laws, they will find that they not only face fines, but they can find themselves with other sanctions as well, often incarceration being one of them, meaning that if you violate or fraudulently use cigarettes or alcohol, you are facing incarceration in either the state prison system for felonies or the district county jails for misdemeanors. Unlike these particular three types and divisions of laws, the civil law would be the fourth division. Civil laws regulate relationships between individuals. They involve property, contracts, and business disputes. They typically are between person versus person, as opposed to government versus person or person versus government. And with civil cases, you are not going to find yourself in a prison or jail setting. There is no incarceration, but rather typically a restitution or monetary challenge that is involved. Okay, so let's take a closer look at our civil law. Is it criminal or civil? Police officers deal with criminal laws, but we're often called by people in our community to resolve issues that are technically civil. We have no authority over civil laws, and we have to advise them that that's an action that they need to bring before a court, at which point either the judge or the jury will make the determination as to where the preponderance of the evidence lies and who is the responsible party or the less responsible party. So again, civil laws are like your lawsuits. It's a civil action or a lawsuit. It's between two parties looking at the individual's interests. We usually recognize it as a private law, and it defines and determines the rights and responsibilities of an individual. It regulates relationships between individuals and or groups. So where do our civil laws fit in our everyday life? Civil marriages. You get married. It's an agreement between two parties, whether it be in a church for the religious sanctions or it be in the courthouse as a civil sanction. Either way, when you decide not to marry or somebody disagrees with the marriage and they go before the judge will not send one of the parties to jail or prison, unless obviously there are criminal actions that get involved. So in a marriage, a divorce, a contract, where you make an agreement or have an arrangement for another individual to do some work or purchase something and you have a contract, if you both agree and one party does not fulfill that contract, to the desire that you have, it may not be criminal unless there was a purposeful intent for them to fraud the purchaser of whatever it is they want. Real estate, insurance, consumer protections are often recognized as what we would say civil laws. It's an agreement between one and another, and when that agreement goes bad, one of the parties will ask the courts to oversee it and make the determining factor. Okay, negligence can be both civil or criminal, depending on the situation. So let's see what goes on when a person feels that they have been wronged by another. So again, a civil case is between two parties where one feels wronged by another. In the action, will typically award a monetary value for receiving that wrong. Or the plaintiff will make some amends, or the defendant, will make some amends to the plaintiff. Okay, so that takes us to the two players in a civil case. The two players are considered the plaintiff versus the defendant. You always have a defendant, whether you're in criminal court or civil court. The individual being accused of something has a right to defend why they did what they did, or why they weren't the ones who actually did it. So the plaintiff will be, in a civil case, the individual saying and filing the complaint alleging that the defendant did some kind of wrong towards the plaintiff. We know from when we did our traffic tickets that the proof of liability, which we also know another word for liability, IVY, is responsibility. The proof of the liability needed is that 51%, which we know is specified as preponderance of the evidence. So the court, be it the judge or the jury, will hear all of the arguments both ways, with attorneys helping to get the information out, and then they will weigh both sides of the story and determine which party they believe more, and at that point advise that the other party with less than 51%, in essence, is the responsible, not guilty, but responsible party. Great. Okay, so when we talk about negligence and how does that become criminal, well, if a death occurs solely because of negligence, perhaps there may be no criminal violation, and it may just be a civil case, such as in OJ with the wrongful death, considered a private wrong. So he had involvement. They thought it was a wrongful death lawsuit, even though he was not found guilty on the criminal homicide charges that they were trying to charge him with and convict him with. He was in fact found responsible in the wrongful death of his wife. Okay, time for a break, and you will go on to part 3.